On September 28, 2025, Jessica Williams, 33, from Chicago, traveled to New Orleans to celebrate her birthday. While walking along Bourbon Street with her sister, an argument between two men, later identified as Micah Jarius Andre, 20, and Dontrell Bradley, 19, escalated into gunfire. Within seconds, multiple rounds were fired into the crowded street. Jessica was struck and died at the scene, while her sister was seriously injured.
Suspects are in custody following the death of a Chicago woman in New Orleans. 33-year-old Jessica Williams was shot on Bourbon Street. That happened over the weekend, and she was the mother of two. Police say that one man was taken into custody this morning, this in connection with the shooting, and a second suspect is in the hospital after being shot himself. Police say the two men fired shots at each other, and Williams was an innocent bystander.
Police launched an immediate investigation, reviewing surveillance footage and interviewing witnesses. Both Andre and Bradley were arrested and charged in connection with the shooting. The incident sparked renewed concern about gun access among young offenders, tourist safety, and law enforcement presence in high-traffic nightlife areas. This report examines a sequence of events leading to the shooting, the investigation that followed, and the broader implications surrounding accountability, prevention, and the growing threat of violence in public spaces. Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from, and what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Jessica Williams was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. She spent her formative years in a middle-class neighborhood, surrounded by family and close friends. Those who knew her described her as hard-working, disciplined, and resilient. From a young age, she showed responsibility and maturity beyond her years, often helping her mother manage the home and supporting her younger sister. She attended local public schools, performed well academically, and was known for her calm and dependable nature. Jessica grew up with strong family values, placing loyalty and dedication above all else. Her relationship with her mother and sister remained constant throughout her life, marked by daily communication and shared responsibilities within the family. Jessica became a mother of two children, a 4-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. She raised them on her own, providing stability and care through consistent effort. Her days typically began before sunrise and ended late at night. She worked long hours to support her family, often balancing more than one job. Her mother assisted with childcare when needed, allowing Jessica to focus on sustaining the household. Despite her demanding routine, she maintained involvement in her children's education and extracurricular activities. Those close to her acknowledged her limited personal time and noted that she rarely engaged in leisure activities or travel. This trip to New Orleans marked the first extended personal vacation she had taken in years. Jessica was described as a reliable and grounded person. She was consistent in her commitments and known for being punctual and organized. She enjoyed listening to R&B and jazz, spending weekends with family, and preparing meals for gatherings. Friends mentioned her sense of humor and her calm demeanor in stressful situations. She had a small but close circle of friends and preferred family gatherings to large crowds. Her sense of duty and modest lifestyle reflected her focus on providing a better future for her children. The trip to New Orleans was intended as a brief personal celebration, an opportunity to step away from daily responsibilities. Jessica turned 33 in late September 2025. Her family convinced her to celebrate her birthday away from home for the first time in several years. After considering a few destinations, she chose New Orleans for its culture, music, and reputation as a popular tourist spot. Her sister accompanied her on the trip. They planned a weekend itinerary that included local dining, sightseeing in the French Quarter, and listening to live jazz on Bourbon Street. The trip was meant to be short, just 3 days. Jessica expressed excitement, but also hesitation about leaving her children behind. The decision to go was meant to mark a simple moment of joy. At approximately 6 p.m., Jessica and her sister ate dinner at a French Quarter restaurant. Witnesses described them as relaxed and cheerful, taking photos and sharing drinks. By 9 p.m., they walk along Bourbon Street, joining a dense crowd of tourists, street performers, and vendors. The area was well-lit and busy. Between 1:30 and 2 a.m., the sisters began heading back to their hotel, located several blocks away. They moved with the flow of people exiting nearby clubs. Jessica's sister was recording short clips on her phone as they walked. At 2:22 a.m., gunshots were heard from the intersection of Bourbon Street and Orleans Avenue. Multiple witnesses reported a brief verbal altercation between two men moments before the shooting began. According to police reports and surveillance footage, a confrontation occurred between Makai Jarius Andre, age 20, and Dontrell Bradley, age 19. The men exchanged words that quickly escalated into physical aggression. Both were armed. Investigators later confirmed that Andre fired first, striking Bradley. In response, Bradley returned fire. The exchange of bullets occurred in rapid succession in a crowded public space. Jessica Williams and her sister were walking nearby and were caught in the line of fire. Jessica was struck in the chest. Her sister was hit by a bullet that fractured a rib and lodged near her breast. Neither woman was involved in the dispute. They were bystanders attempting to leave the area. Bourbon Street quickly descended into chaos. Witnesses reported hearing multiple shots and seeing people run in different directions. Some fell to the ground for cover. Several individuals began filming the aftermath on their phones. Emergency services were called at approximately 2:25 a.m. Paramedics and police arrived within minutes. Officers immediately secured the area and directed crowds away from the scene. Jessica's sister received first aid from paramedics. Jessica was unresponsive. Despite resuscitation attempts, she was pronounced dead at the scene.
What was meant to be a joyful birthday celebration quickly turned into heartbreak when a Chicago woman was killed, an innocent bystander of a shooting that took place on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. 33-year-old Jessica Williams had to be convinced to take time for herself and celebrate her birthday. The single mother's focus was her two young children, according to cousin Cardasia Wells, who did not want to show her face on camera.
It's either work, my kids, or doing something with my kids. There's no in between, so she don't make free time for herself.
But Williams, the oldest of four, decided it was time to celebrate. She, two of her siblings, her mother, other family members, and Wells went to New Orleans on Friday, planning to come back Sunday, the day of Williams' birthday.
That was the goal, to just celebrate her and my cousin too, because he had just graduated college, so we was going to celebrate the both of them.
Wells says it was around 2 a.m. on Sunday when the family was heading back to their hotel after a night in the French Quarter.
On our way leaving, two guys got into an altercation, and we're not thinking that they're gonna, pull out any weapons or any of that, because it's a big crowd.
New Orleans police say the fight led to a shootout on Bourbon Street. 4 people were shot, and they include Williams, who was killed, and her younger sister, who was injured.
How you go to another city and just try to have some fun, and return everyone but one person.
New Orleans police say they interviewed 2 persons of interest and are looking for another man they believe is the suspect. They shared this picture with us. Meanwhile, Williams' close-knit family is rallying around her children, who are 7 and 5 years old, while supporting each other.
I thought I was going to be okay, and I thought that I can get past this one. I thought that tomorrow was going to get better, but I can't see it getting better.
Williams' sister is still recovering in a New Orleans hospital. She's expected to come home later this week.
4 total victims were confirmed. Jessica Williams, deceased, her sister, 1 male and 1 female bystander with non-life-threatening injuries. The New Orleans Police Department cordoned off the intersection and began collecting shell casings and reviewing surveillance footage from nearby businesses. Homicide detectives were assigned to the case immediately. Statements were taken from witnesses who had seen the confrontation. Within hours, authorities released initial details to the public, confirming the identity of the deceased as a visitor from Chicago. Investigators used camera footage to identify the 2 shooters. Warrants were issued within 48 hours for the arrest of both suspects. Police arrested Makai Jarius Andre and Dontrell Bradley in connection with the shooting. Both were booked into Orleans Parish Jail. Andre was charged with second-degree murder, attempted murder, and illegal possession of firearm. Bradley faced similar charges. Preliminary reports suggested that their altercation stemmed from a personal dispute unrelated to the victims. Authorities confirmed that Jessica and her sister were innocent bystanders who were unintentionally caught in the crossfire. Surveillance footage from multiple angles captured the incident. Forensic teams recovered multiple shell casings and weapons linked to both suspects. Ballistic analysis confirmed that Jessica was struck by a bullet fired from one of Bradley's weapons. Witness statements aligned with the footage, confirming that the shooters exchanged fire across the street without regard for public safety. The New Orleans Police Department released a statement labeling the event as a tragic instance of reckless violence in a crowded public area. Officials pledged to increase patrols in the French Quarter and work to improve security measures. Jessica's body was later transported to Chicago after autopsy and identification. Her sister remained hospitalized for several days and was later discharged. The family coordinated funeral arrangements and initiated efforts to secure justice through cooperation with law enforcement. The investigation into the fatal shooting of Jessica Williams, 33, began within minutes of the incident on Bourbon Street in New Orleans. What was meant to be a night of celebration turned into chaos when gunfire erupted near the 300 block, sending crowds fleeing for safety. The New Orleans Police Department, NOPD, immediately launched a homicide investigation, seeking to uncover who was responsible for taking the life of a visiting mother of two who had come from Chicago to celebrate her birthday. Detectives began by canvassing the area for witnesses. Bourbon Street, one of the busiest sections of the French Quarter, was crowded with tourists and locals. Officers went door to door among bars and clubs, collecting surveillance footage and interviewing anyone who might have seen or recorded what happened. Several witnesses described seeing two men arguing before shots were fired. Video evidence quickly became the foundation of the case. Street cameras, club security footage, and cell phone video from bystanders provided multiple perspectives of the shooting. In the clips, two men could be seen confronting each other across the street before one of them drew a weapon. Within seconds, gunfire erupted, sending people scattering and ducking behind parked cars. Some witnesses initially thought the noise was fireworks until screams followed. Eyewitnesses reported that the gunmen fired from opposite sides of the street, and both appeared to continue shooting even as pedestrians ran in panic. One tourist from Texas told investigators, "It looked like they didn't care who got hit." Through the collected footage and statements, investigators identified two primary suspects. Makai Jarius Andre, 20, believed to be the first shooter, and Dontrell Bradley, 19, who allegedly returned fire after being struck. Detectives discovered both men had prior criminal histories. Public records showed that Andre had prior charges related to aggravated assault, and Bradley was wanted in Texas for an unrelated weapons offense. By reviewing phone data and nearby camera networks, investigators tracked Andre's movements immediately after the shooting. He was seen fleeing toward a waiting vehicle, later traced to Jefferson Parish. Police issued a statewide bulletin for his arrest. Meanwhile, Bradley was located at a hospital with gunshot wounds consistent with the Bourbon Street incident. He initially provided a false name, but officers confirmed his identity through fingerprint comparison. Within 48 hours, Andre was arrested in Jefferson Parish without incident. He was booked on charges of second-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted second-degree murder, and illegal possession of a firearm by a felon. Bradley, who was still recovering from his injuries, was formally charged once medically cleared. In addition to his involvement in the shooting, authorities linked him to an outstanding warrant for aggravated assault in Texas and felon in possession charges in Louisiana. NOPD Chief Kirkpatrick stated that the rapid arrest was a result of clear cooperation between the homicide unit, the surveillance team, and the community. Despite this progress, she acknowledged that the investigation was far from complete. The most critical question remained: who fired the bullet that killed Jessica Williams? Crime scene technicians recovered multiple shell casings from at least 2 different calibers, confirming that both suspects fired weapons. Some bullets struck nearby buildings, while others shattered glass windows. An autopsy report from the Orleans Parish coroner confirmed that Jessica Williams died from a single gunshot wound to the chest, which caused rapid internal bleeding. The trajectory analysis suggested the bullet came from the east side of Bourbon Street, the direction where Andre was last seen standing. However, final confirmation awaited ballistic comparison between the casings, recovered bullets, and the suspect's firearms. Investigators submitted the evidence to the NOPD crime lab for testing. The results were expected to determine which weapon fired the fatal shot, a key factor in assigning direct culpability for Jessica's death. Witness testimony provided additional clarity about the moments before and after the shooting. Several tourists described scenes of panic and confusion as people ran in all directions. One man recalled ducking behind a trash bin while others screamed for help. Bar staff members told police that the sound of gunfire was followed by a wave of terrified patrons rushing inside for cover. Jessica's sister, who had been walking beside her, gave a detailed account to detectives. She said they were returning to their hotel when the shots rang out. Jessica suddenly collapsed, clutching her chest, and her sister caught her before she hit the ground. "She was still holding my hand," she told investigators. Security guards stationed at a nearby entrance reported hearing at least 6 shots fired in quick succession. They immediately called 911 while assisting injured bystanders. Jessica's mother spoke to local and national media outlets days later. She said her daughter had been reluctant to take the trip, initially hesitant to travel so far from her children. Family members convinced her to go, believing she deserved to celebrate her 33rd birthday. After receiving the call about Jessica's death, her mother described the anguish of having to tell her grandchildren that their mother wouldn't be coming home. She said Jessica had worked 2 jobs to support her family and had never been in trouble with the law. The family demanded accountability, urging both cities, Chicago and New Orleans, to address gun violence tourism concerns in popular nightlife areas. Jessica's sister survived the shooting, but suffered a broken rib and bullet fragments lodged in her breast. She underwent surgery at a New Orleans hospital and was released several days later. Since returning home, she has struggled with post-traumatic stress, experiencing frequent nightmares and survivor's guilt. She told investigators that the memory of her sister collapsing plays over like a loop in her mind. She continues to cooperate with the homicide investigation. Jessica left behind 2 young children, now under the care of their grandmother. Family members established a fundraiser to support their education and long-term needs. Donations poured in from both Chicago and New Orleans residents, many expressing outrage that such violence occurred in a tourist-heavy area. The incident sparked public outrage and renewed discussions about safety on Bourbon Street. Vigils were held both in Chicago and New Orleans. On social media, the hashtag Justice for Jessica Williams gained traction, with thousands calling for justice and demanding stronger policing and stricter firearm control. New Orleans officials have since pledged to review surveillance coverage and crowd management in nightlife zones. As of now, the investigation remains active while prosecutors await ballistic confirmation to finalize charges and seek convictions. The fatal shooting of Jessica Williams, a 33-year-old mother from Chicago, generated extensive coverage in both local New Orleans outlets and major national media platforms. Within hours of her identification, networks such as WWL-TV, Fox 8 New Orleans, and People magazine began reporting on the incident. Headlines described her as a devoted mother caught in crossfire and emphasized that she had been visiting the city to celebrate her birthday when the shooting occurred. Reporters detailed how Jessica had arrived in New Orleans just 2 days earlier with her sister and friends. The coverage presented the tragedy as part of a growing pattern of gun violence in tourist-heavy districts, particularly on Bourbon Street, where thousands of visitors gather nightly. Law enforcement officials were questioned about how 2 armed men were able to fire multiple rounds in one of the most heavily policed and camera-monitored areas in Louisiana. City leaders, including members of the New Orleans City Council, expressed concern about the incident's potential impact on tourism. Analysts on national broadcasts discussed whether the incident reflected broader security failures in nightlife zones where alcohol, crowds, and easy access to firearms frequently combine with fatal consequences. Jessica's final hours were widely documented on social media. Posts from her phone, uploaded shortly before the shooting, showed her smiling and filming Bourbon Street, surrounded by neon lights and music. In one video, she was seen laughing with her sister, captioned "Birthday Weekend Starts Now." Hours later, those same videos were reposted by news accounts and crime blogs, paired with reports of her death. This stark contrast from celebration tragedy quickly went viral. Thousands of social media users shared Jessica's last recorded moments, many expressing shock at how rapidly a joyful night transformed into chaos. The clips also helped investigators establish a precise timeline leading up to the gunfire. Online discussions soon expanded beyond mourning. Hashtags such as hashtag Justice for Jessica Williams and hashtag Stop the Shootings circulated widely, while public forums debated whether cities like New Orleans were adequately addressing the flow of illegal firearms into entertainment districts. As media coverage intensified, public frustration grew around recurring questions of safety in nightlife areas. Commentators and community advocates began asking how guns continued to reach crowded entertainment zones despite existing restrictions and regular police patrols. The New Orleans Police Department, NOPD, stated that no metal detectors or mandatory screenings were in place for pedestrians entering Bourbon Street, as it is a public roadway. Critics argue that this lack of screening allows weapons to circulate freely among large crowds. Policy discussions emerged around whether the city should adopt security checkpoints similar to those used during major festivals. Officials faced scrutiny about surveillance coverage gaps, particularly regarding how quickly officers responded once shots were fired. Editorials in both the Times-Picayune and Chicago Tribune questioned the city's nightlife safety measures, emphasizing that Jessica's death was not an isolated case, but part of a recurring pattern of uncontrolled street violence near tourist hubs. Prosecutors filed formal charges against both Mekhi Jarius Andre, 20, and Dontrell Bradley, 19, within days of their arrests. The Orleans Parish District Attorney's Office built its case using 3 categories of evidence: surveillance footage, ballistic analysis, and eyewitness testimony. The prosecution's narrative maintained that Andre initiated the gunfire following a verbal dispute, and Bradley's retaliatory shots endangered the public and led to Jessica Williams' death. Andre's defense attorney argued that he acted in self-defense, claiming that Bradley brandished a weapon first. Conversely, Bradley's defense claimed he only fired back after being struck, asserting that his actions were an instinctive reaction under threat. The court filings also noted the recovery of 2 firearms, a 9mm pistol linked to Andre and a .40 caliber handgun tied to Bradley. Both weapons were unregistered. The investigation faced several legal and forensic challenges. Chief among them was determining which gun fired the bullet that killed Jessica Williams. Ballistics indicated the fatal round came from one of 2 calibers found at the scene, but conclusive results were delayed pending further analysis. Another issue was intent versus reaction. Prosecutors needed to establish that both suspects acted with disregard for human life, not in spontaneous self-defense. The defense teams used witness confusion, caused by the rapid, chaotic nature of the shooting, to argue that neither man deliberately intended to kill anyone. Witness contradictions also complicated the case. Several testimonies differed on the sequence of shots, lighting conditions, and suspect positions. Some witnesses insisted that Andre shot first, while others stated both men pulled weapons almost simultaneously. Prosecutors faced a burden of proving reckless conduct beyond reasonable doubt, even if it could not be established whose bullet was fatal. As court proceedings progressed, community pressure increased for transparency and accountability. Activists and residents demanded that the NOPD release full incident reports and surveillance footage. Community organizations in both Chicago and New Orleans held press conferences urging a complete review of gun access policies. Jessica's family repeatedly called for both men to be held equally responsible, arguing that both actions contributed to her death. The district attorney's office publicly stated that it would pursue the highest possible charges, pending final forensic results. Public petitions circulated online, requesting federal oversight to ensure no leniency in sentencing. The trial began in Orleans Parish Criminal District Court approximately 6 months after the shooting. Proceedings were closely followed by local and national media outlets, with reporters stationed outside the courthouse each day. Witness testimonies included Jessica's sister, nearby business owners, and several tourists who had recorded parts of the incident on their phones. The prosecution presented synchronized footage from multiple camera angles, showing flashes of gunfire, people ducking, and the chaos that followed. The courtroom was shown slow-motion footage illustrating muzzle flashes from both sides of the street, synchronized with timestamps from surveillance systems. This evidence helped establish that both suspects fired within seconds of each other. Forensic experts testified about the shell casings and bullet trajectories. Though inconclusive about which weapon fired the fatal shot, they confirmed that both guns were discharged toward the area where Jessica and her sister were standing. The defense teams maintained their positions. Andre's counsel argued that his client feared for his life and fired first in anticipation of being attacked. Bradley's attorneys countered that he acted only after sustaining a gunshot wound and reacted out of shock rather than aggression. Prosecutors emphasized that regardless of who shot first, both defendants intentionally discharged weapons in a densely populated public area, thereby showing reckless disregard for human life. During closing arguments, the state pressed the jury to convict both men of second-degree murder, while the defense sought a lesser charge of manslaughter, arguing lack of premeditation. After several days of deliberation, the jury weighed second-degree murder versus manslaughter, focusing on the evidence of mutual confrontation and rapid escalation. As of the most recent filings, both defendants remain in custody pending sentencing. The case continues to prompt policy discussions about Bourbon Street security, firearm control, and accountability in public shooting incidents. The New Orleans City Council has since introduced proposals for enhanced surveillance expansion, metal detectors at key entry points, and stricter firearm enforcement near nightlife zones. The legal process, while advancing, remains a reminder of the unresolved questions that surround public safety in areas known more for celebration than tragedy. On September 28, 2025, Bourbon Street in New Orleans was crowded as usual. Bars overflowed, music echoed, and visitors filled the sidewalks. Among them was Jessica Williams, a 33-year-old mother from Chicago. She had traveled to New Orleans to celebrate her birthday, her first vacation in years. Hours later, she would be dead from a gunshot wound in the same street known for laughter and light. The incident raised pressing questions about how safe New Orleans nightlife truly is. Reports show that despite visible patrols, violent incidents continue in popular tourist zones. The Bourbon Street shooting forced renewed scrutiny on how much security is enough, and whether the existing police presence during peak tourist hours is adequate. Surveillance footage captured multiple police units nearby, yet the gunfire erupted and ended before intervention. Should the city increase law enforcement visibility? Should late-night crowd control become stricter? These questions dominate conversations among residents and tourists alike, highlighting the thin line between entertainment and danger in New Orleans' famed nightlife. The tragedy exposed another issue: gun access among young offenders. Both suspects, Makai Jarius Andre, 20, and Dontrell Bradley, 19, were legally too young to purchase handguns, yet both were armed that night. According to police records, Andre allegedly drew his firearm first, firing at Bradley. Bradley returned fire, and in the chaos, stray bullets hit bystanders. Jessica Williams was one of them. Her sister, standing beside her, was struck in the rib and survived. Investigations revealed that neither suspect had legally registered their firearms. Authorities are examining how the weapons were obtained and whether prior offenses or known associations with illegal firearm trades were overlooked. The case underscores a larger national issue: the easy circulation of illegal guns in American cities. Court filings also reveal both suspects had prior interactions with law enforcement. These records raise questions about how many red flags were missed and whether systemic failures contributed to the confrontation that claimed an innocent life. The confrontation between two young men, ending in the death of an uninvolved woman, reflects the ongoing cycle of violence that plagues many urban centers. Both shooters were under 21, involved in a personal dispute that escalated into public gunfire. Jessica's death was not the intended outcome, but she became collateral damage in a recurring pattern of quick tempers, accessible weapons, and absent conflict resolution. Witness statements indicate that neither shooter knew Jessica or her group. They were strangers passing by, caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Experts describe this case as a snapshot of America's gun crisis. For every personal feud that turns deadly, there are multiple victims outside the conflict. The The line between aggressor and victim blurs when communities are saturated with fear and retaliation becomes routine. Jessica Williams' background is typical of many working-class mothers balancing responsibility and exhaustion. She worked full-time in Chicago, raising her children with the help of her mother. According to family reports, this trip to New Orleans was her first personal getaway in years. Friends say she was convinced to go after hesitating for months. The idea was simple, a short vacation to celebrate life. Yet that brief escape ended in tragedy. Her story mirrors a familiar theme. Hardworking mothers who rarely take time for themselves, only to encounter tragedy in moments meant for rest. This adds another layer to the case, how random violence intrudes on ordinary lives, regardless of intent, class, or circumstance. Jessica's mother now raises her children in Chicago. Local media reports describe her home filled with framed photos of Jessica's last night, pictures taken just hours before the shooting. The family organizes annual vigils both in Chicago and New Orleans. These gatherings serve as memorials and reminders of fragility of life. Jessica's sister, who survived the attack, continues to recover physically and emotionally. Her survival has been described as a narrow escape, the bullet lodging near vital organs. She now speaks publicly at violence awareness events, hoping to draw attention to the randomness of such crimes. The shooting prompted several community initiatives. In Chicago, local groups launched campaigns to raise awareness about gun violence and its lasting effects. Public discussions focus on how violence transcends geography. What starts in one city can echo across others. In New Orleans, city officials announced plans to strengthen nightlife patrols. Proposals include increased surveillance coverage, curfews on certain streets during peak hours, and stricter licensing regulations for establishments operating late into the night. Whether these measures will be implemented or effective remains to be seen. The two suspects, Andre and Bradley, were arrested days after the incident. They faced multiple charges, including second-degree murder, attempted murder, and illegal possession of firearms. Court documents reveal that prosecutors may pursue the death penalty or life imprisonment due to the fatal consequences of the shooting. Defense attorneys are expected to argue self-defense, citing mutual gunfire and confusion at the scene. Possible outcomes include plea bargains, reduced sentences, or extended trials depending on ballistic evidence. Investigators are still analyzing the exact bullet trajectory that struck Jessica, as both suspects fired multiple rounds. The inability to conclusively determine which shooter's bullet caused her death complicates the legal process. Despite multiple surveillance angles and eyewitnesses, some questions remain unanswered. Investigators have not publicly confirmed which gun fired the fatal shot. The motive behind the altercation, believed to be a verbal dispute escalating into violence, is still disputed. Authorities continue to reconstruct the event through forensic mapping, but the randomness of the incident leaves little closure for family. The investigation underscores a broader challenge in urban crime cases, identifying clear accountability amid chaos. A trip meant to celebrate life ended with death. A woman left her city for a weekend of rest and never returned home. A mother, sister, and daughter, gone because two men chose violence in a crowded public space. Could more police presence have prevented the shooting? Should stricter gun control laws exist to prevent young offenders from obtaining weapons? Will either suspect be convicted, or will unresolved evidence blur the outcome? And beyond the courtroom, how many more families will live through similar losses before real change occurs? Jessica Williams' death reveals a harsh truth. Safety is fragile, even in moments meant for joy. Her story, rooted in everyday hope and ordinary plans, exposes the dark intersections of gun access, youth violence, and public vulnerability. This case remains more than another headline. It's a reflection of continuing crisis, where lives can be lost in seconds and answers may never come in full. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.